with a presentation by the group that I will ask Emily Brock to introduce for us. We will hear a presentation for 15, 20 minutes.
Can you guys hear me talking?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. Can you hear us?
Jeff says yes.
We got a thumbs up.
Thanks,
Well,
Jeff.
I don't know if Emily can hear
Emily,
us.
can you hear us?
Emily Brock, can you hear us?
Ooh, that's
That's the
good.
problem.
Yep.
Hang with us, everyone. Technical difficulties here.
No, we cannot hear them.
Just to check, can you hear me, Emily?
But maybe it's just me. If somebody else want to, is it just me that can't hear you? All right, I'm going to come upstairs then.
Zoe. Are you being arbitrary and capricious? Who gets in?
Okay, while we are doing some rearranging here and while one of our staff members is coming up to join us in the room, and I'm trying to multitask, admitting folks to the meeting, just a couple of housekeeping matters. This is not the be-all and end-all of discussion on this topic today. We are just hearing an overview of what is being proposed. We'll have an opportunity to hear from the applicant or the developer who's making the proposal. We will have some time for public comment. We also will have some time for questions and discussion among the commission as far as what next steps or process might look like. If you are a member of the public at the point in time where we do ask for public comment, if you're using Microsoft Teams, please use the raise hand function, and we will call on you in the order in which you raise your hand. If you are on the phone, at the point in time when I ask for public comment from folks on the phone line, please unmute yourself using *6. And please just chime in and introduce yourself. I would ask everyone to be respectful to one another, both in terms of time and also the nature of your comments. We have a hard stop at 3 p.m., so we've got to make sure everything gets accomplished within that time frame, which again, this is beginning of a conversation. This is not if we need more time to discuss, to deliberate, to think about next steps, we will take that time. We're in no rush here today. If you want to, you can have your camera on by all means, or you can turn it off. I would just ask that you do turn your camera on if you would like at the point in time when you are offering testimony. And we have a big crowd today, so we might not get to everyone. If you are wanting to speak, if someone else offers comments that is exactly the same as you want to offer, no need to be redundant. And with that, let's just get right to it.
About the purpose of this,
Yeah, I'll give a
decisions.
Yes, I will turn it over to Emily Brock to talk a little bit more about the purpose of today's meeting and also introduce our presenter. Emily?
Hi, I'm Emily Brock. I'm the Director of Land and Economic Development for the county. I'm just going to briefly give an introduction to the proposal that we have for us, and then pass it off to WGM Group to kind of get into the details about their proposal. And then Bill Gallagher is here from Larchmont Golf Course. He is our staff person, so to speak. So I'll just get right into it. On October 15th of this year, so about a month ago, exactly a month ago, the county received a proposal from a local developer and an engineering firm to develop Larchmont Golf Course into a mixed-use housing, and in exchange for that, they would provide a plot of land that they owned, which is about 160 acres, where a new golf course could be built. November 9th, the Larchmont Board received this formal proposal for the first time. This is the first meeting where the commissioners have heard the proposal. They have not spoken to any of the folks on the Larchmont Board or the developers or together about this proposal. So I just want to be really clear with the media on this call and folks in this room that this is the very, very first meeting that the commissioners have ever had about this proposal. And should it move forward at all, it will be a very long process. And so please be patient with us. There's going to be a lot of time to weigh in on the project. As you know, Larchmont is a treasured public amenity with enormous use, and the county is going to take a measured, thoughtful approach to any idea for developing it, because once it's gone forever. However, this is a bold proposal that could add significant housing supply to our market, and the developers and WGM Group deserve a chance to present it to the commissioners and to the community. So again, we're at the very beginning stages of this. There's still a lot of legal and financial questions about the value of the land and quantifying its public benefit that the county would need to answer in order to pursue the proposal. The first step, though, is for the commission to hear the basic premise of the proposal and decide as a body if and how they would like to proceed with information gathering and public discussion. And so I'm going to pass it off to Jeff Smith to do his presentation.
Thanks, Emily. Jeff?
Thanks.
Thanks all. Are we able to share a screen? Kate Dinsmore is here with me as well. She'll share if we can.
Yeah, let's work on this.
We could forward over a PDF of it as well if we need to.
It'll just take a sec. We gotta find on this list.
Here we go. Can we just click on his name?
Yeah.
On his,
You see his
on
name?
his,
Not his name is Kate Dinsmore. Yeah, she's got
oh,
it.
there
Okay.
we go. You got
Very
it?
good. Yep, we can see it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. All right, thanks everyone. I'm Jeff Smith. I'm a principal engineer at WGM Group. With me today as well as Kate Dinsmore. She's a partner planner and landscape architect at WGM Group. And thanks to everyone at Missoula County, from staff to the Larchmont Board to this body and everyone in attendance for your time here. We'll get into some details of the proposal here in a moment. The proposal is presented in the spirit of trying to solve a community problem. It's an opportunity for the community to work together. Following the example of leadership from the Missoula County Housing Action Plan, our clients approach this proposal with a unique mindset that's driven by the needs of the community. The housing crisis facing Missoula and many other communities is daunting. We likely all know someone who's struggling to find housing in Missoula they can afford. When we multiply this struggle by the thousands of Missoula families facing similar challenges, the problem can feel insurmountable. Solving the challenges ahead of us as a community will require unity, courage, and open minds. Daunting challenges require daunting solutions. The proposal will move Larchmont across the river and build a new neighborhood with housing Montanans can afford in its place is certainly a daunting proposition. We'll take a look at the concept presented at our proposal shortly. It is very preliminary in its planning and is intended to foster discussion around the current and future housing issues that we're facing in Missoula. The idea is, at its core, a concept to allow working Missoulians to remain in Missoula and not be displaced by the ever-increasing cost of renting and owning a home in Missoula. The idea is much bigger than the development partners involved, and if well received, there'd be extensive collaboration with strategic partners in the community to assure and maintain affordability. To be transparent, it took courage for our group to hit send on the proposal. This idea represents such an opportunity for transformational impact that the benefits outweighed the risks of hitting send. And because the opportunity to provide a replacement site for Larchmont is perishable, we felt compelled to act. As the community weighs the merits of this proposal and balances quality of life, community investment in infrastructure and housing, A good deal of courage will be required to make the best decision for the future of Missoula. The reason we requested a response this year in our proposal was out of concern for the perishability of the replacement opportunity. Our intention is not to offend or unfairly shift the burden of this idea elsewhere. The land at Larchmont will continue to escalate in value in 5-10 years, maybe more, maybe less, because the property sits within the urban core and has only seasonal public benefit. A decision may be made that the land at Larchmont is not being used to its highest and best use, and that the greatest public benefit is its housing, commercial, and medical center expansion. If that decision occurs in the future, that may not be a replacement location. The opportunity to act with foresight is now if a municipal course is desired for the future. This body, community planning teams, and the golf course advisory team have the opportunity to collaborate today to get ahead of the change. We're grateful for your time and efforts around this opportunity and thankful for the forum that you've provided here. Go to the next slide, Kate. There's some snips from several local planning docs and then some recent press. We'll be sending out a copy of this afterwards. So I think the string that brings this all together is in the 2021 Missoula County Community Needs Assessment, 67% of respondents identified increasing the supply of housing that Missoulians can afford as a top priority for Missoula County, with over half respondents identifying initiatives to maintain and or increase the supply of affordable housing as their top priority for housing initiatives. The strategies presented in the Missoula County Housing Action Plan will certainly lend to making an impact in our community's problem. As stated in the Housing Action Plan draft, in order to accommodate a growing population, development must occur more densely than it has in the past, in areas with access to infrastructure, transit, and retail centers, in order to reduce the environmental and other impacts of growth. Take a look at the next slide, please, Kate. Blue Line Development, the offerer here, their role in this discussion is that of neighborhood creators. Blue Line promotes dignity, equity, and quality of life through housing. They have successfully developed thousands of permanently affordable housing units across the West. Notable in Missoula recently with the Trinity and Villaggio projects that are currently underway. WGM Group's role in this conversation is on the community infrastructure and housing fronts. We've been in Missoula serving in this role for over 52 years. In facing the housing crisis head on, there's an opportunity to think outside of the box, to analyze our options, to act swiftly, and to consider the long-term effects of today's decision. While the Larchmont Golf Course is a valued and profitable recreational amenity for the community, imagine transforming the almost 170 acres of the Larchmont site and the adjacent city of Missoula property into a neighborhood with approximately 2,000 new housing units for all income levels, creating home ownership opportunities, senior living, medical center expansion, neighborhood shops, and parks. We would not be opening the discussion without having a replacement location to bring to the table and trade, labeled here as the future golf course site. This site cannot be developed for residential uses due to the difficulty of extending public infrastructure across the river and the presence of the floodplain. Replacement site appears well suited to become a productive year-round recreational amenity, however, for the community as a golf course with integrated public uses such as cross-country skiing trails and river access possible. In talking with the Larchmont board and staff last week, it's abundantly clear that Larchmont cannot be replaced. The years of working on Larchmont have created a special place that means a lot in the lives of the people who put 45,000 rounds of golf through it this year. While Larchmont cannot be replaced, can the impacts it has on quality of life in Missoula be replicated? The quality of life in Missoula is special and is a key factor in why we all live here. Its quality of life is also a contributing factor in the high demand for housing and the escalating home prices that we're experiencing. Similarly to its investment in Larchmont, our community has and continues to make large investment into community infrastructure, from roads to sewer, water, transit, schools, and parks. So we discussed the question at hand today. We ask that consideration be given to the balance between quality of life, housing attainability, and community investment in infrastructure. All three of these factors are critical to the long-term health of Missoula. Kick it over to you, Kate, for the next view.
So this project looks to provide housing for existing Montanans and their children so they can continue to afford to live here. We want to avoid pushing out Montanans to less expensive areas and having existing Montanans replaced by a new population. The proposal targets 2,000 housing units, including 800 plus attainable single-family owner-occupied homes utilizing the community land trust model to protect affordability into the future. 300 to 400 permanently affordable multifamily homes targeting less than 80% of area median income, and 300 homes targeting the senior living demographic. So what is a community land trust? So it creates housing opportunities by either purchasing land that includes existing housing or by partnering to develop new housing on vacant land. An income qualified family or individual purchase a home that sits on land owned by the CLT, and then the purchase price is more affordable than market rate homes because the value of the land does not factor into the home price. Instead, the new homeowner is buying the home and leasing the land. The new homeowner leases the land from the CLT in a long-term renewable lease. The ground lease includes a resale formula that indicates a resale price for the home. When they're ready to move on, the homeowner agrees to sell the home at a restricted price to keep it affordable in perpetuity, but they may be able to realize appreciation from improvements they make while they live in the house, in addition to their equity according to how long they have lived in the home. So we all know that housing prices are exceeding wages in Missoula. So we've included a graphic to illustrate how much you need to make to buy a house in Missoula. So the median price of a home in Missoula is over $400,000. To afford a median home, you need to have a salary of over $100,000. So many, if not most, of the existing Missoula families are priced out of the Missoula market. And this is the issue at the core of what we're trying to address with this proposal. In Missoula County, many renters and homeowners are cost burdened, meaning they are paying more than 30% of their income for housing. So almost 25% of homeowners are cost burdened, and almost 50% of renters are cost burdened. You don't have to look far to see a story in our local news of residents struggling to find housing or afford housing. The quote in the top right corner is a recent example of someone that went from not being cost burdened to someone that is cost burdened with their rent. So I went from someone who was able to save enough money every month to donate to some good causes out there to just wondering how I was going to stay in Missoula where my job is. So how can this proposal impact the housing crisis? As Jeff said, this concept is very preliminary in its planning, but we put together a graphic to better understand the potential of the site. So including housing opportunities and integration with the surrounding uses. So this creates opportunity for thousands, and we estimate it at about 3,000 occupants of Missoula residents across the living spectrum from children to seniors to access attainable and affordable housing within close proximity to important community services, including schools, employment, healthcare, fire and police, retail services, and recreation with Fort Missoula Regional Park. The increase in supply with economies of scale within development will help flatten pricing escalation of single family and apartment living within the community. About 450 senior living units have been included, knowing that we have an aging population and there is a need for senior housing in the community. Expansion of the community medical center campus increases capacity for medical care and employment opportunity. Expansion of commercial services along the Reserve Street corridor increases retail service and employment opportunities. The project maximizes the benefit of existing physical infrastructure, utilities including sewer and water, schools and roads, and it transitions these benefits into a walkable community. Utilization of existing infrastructure for the development reduces the need to create access in other areas, substantially reducing overall cost of utility and transportation network growth. This site also has the potential to be integrated into the transit network. The project reduces sprawl of growth within the Missoula community to a more inward urban-focused development plan. Inward-focused development decreases overall transportation, translating into less daily trips, lowering impact on environment and climate. Maximum development of the property translates into in excess of $1 million of new annual tax revenue to Missoula County and $2 million of new annual tax revenue to the city of Missoula. The increase of collected tax revenue improves opportunity for Missoula County and the city to increase services to all members of the community. The housing crisis is a national issue, and it is not limited to our community. Due to decades of underbuilding and underinvestment, there is a chronic shortage of affordable and available homes to house the nation's population. Beyond the essential need for shelter, few things are as central to American society than housing and the opportunity to pursue the path of homeownership. Expanding the opportunity for home ownership provides greater financial stability, enabling individuals and families to keep up with other rising costs of living, such as education, healthcare, and childcare. It enables more households to save for college, retirement, or unexpected future expenses, and it helps to reduce or prevent homelessness in communities. So now I'm going to shift a little bit and take a deeper dive into explaining why we're proposing housing at Larchmont. So these images are of aerials of Missoula from 1954 and 2019 that illustrate how our community has grown. So in 1954, Larchmont, which is indicated with the star, wasn't yet built. North Reserve Street and all the big box stores weren't developed. The Mullen area was all agricultural land, and the South Hills weren't developed. Development was centered on downtown Missoula and expanding along brooks. So over the last almost 70 years, the Missoula community has experienced a lot of growth and change, and we have to anticipate more change. As the community grows, there's a lot to balance between quality of life, housing, infrastructure, open space, jobs, and economic growth. On top of balancing all of those competing interests, Missoula is located in a constrained valley. In some ways, this is good because it reduces sprawl and unlimited growth in all directions, but as more people move into the community, it leaves us with the question of where do we grow? So these maps show the primary constraints to development in Missoula County. Those include floodplain, slopes over 25%, which are generally considered unbuildable, public lands, agricultural soils, which is another challenging question, and land that has already been developed. So when you overlay those constraints, you're left with a map that shows the leftover or developable areas in white, and you'll notice there are very few white spaces left. So with so many limitations to growth, you have to really think about where you can grow and how to best use the land that's available. And if you zoom into the Missoula area, you see some pockets where infill is possible. So this map was created by the city of Missoula in 2015. The brown areas are constrained parcels, and that includes Larchmont. Dark green is public, pink is for industrial uses, and then the hatched areas that I've circled in yellow were identified as the most developable land, and there aren't a lot of those areas. There are a handful of other properties of substantial size within and surrounding Missoula that are undeveloped. However, those are controlled by private landowners and have their own set of constraints. This uses public land to help solve a community challenge, which is a goal included in the recently released draft of the Missoula County Housing Action Plan. So taking a closer look at the property that has been identified for a new golf course, we've put together a layout that is a proof of concept. We're not golf course designers. This image is intended to help us understand if we could reasonably expect that this property can support a golf course. The site, with some imagination in siting the clubhouse and driving range and practice holes, can accommodate a 7,000-yard golf course. With a new golf course, additional amenities could be included to provide year-round uses. During the golf season, there are trails for bikes and pedestrians. In winter, the course can include Nordic skiing, and the pond can be used for ice skating. There is the opportunity to install more sustainable irrigation systems, reducing water use, and the clubhouse design can incorporate golf simulators inside for shoulder and off-season use, and be designed as a community center for winter use. The clubhouse can also include a restaurant and bar. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Jeff.
Thanks, Kate. The next slide. I'd like to speak to the floodplain considerations at the replacement site and contrast it with another local course. Linda Vista may come to mind as the annual challenges faced there from groundwater and occasional flooding are well known. Linda Vista's challenges come from its location within the Bitterroot River channel migration zone and its elevation relative to the river. So the image on the next slide depicts the Bitterroot River channel migration zone. This is the area where the river can be expected to move naturally over time. It's kind of tough to see on this slide, but if you note the red down in the Linda Vista area, Linda Vista is in an area where active channel migration could likely occur. This is not the case for the replacement site. Again, it's kind of tough to see here, but you can see there's a narrow band of blue and yellow, blue being the current course, yellow being the channel migration zone. Not the case at the replacement site, where the confines of the active channel migration zone are much more constrained. The presence of the highway and protection provided by it are factors in this. Next slide is an image of the 1997 flood event. So in this side, you can see both Linda Vista and the replacement site. Again, it's kind of tough to tell, but if you look down to the south of the river, you can see the area of Linda Vista is entirely submerged. The replacement site's mostly dry, save some areas where groundwater had come up during this major flood event 24 years ago now. Flip to the next slide. Light of the favorable characteristics of the replacement site, could a golf course be built here that replicates the quality of life that Larchmont provides, while taking advantage of the site's connection to the Bitterroot River and adjacent recreational uses? This presents a chance to be intentional about connecting open space. The opportunity to create a new gateway, recreational gateway between the Missoula and Bitterroot valleys is interesting to think about. It's also exciting to think about how much more valuable the Reserve Street pedestrian bridge could become if there were a neighborhood on the west side of that bridge and a recreational destination down along the river. Switch to the next slide here, if you would, Kate. Some additional public benefits associated with the proposal. Again, there's a lot of text here. I'll read a bunch of it. Municipal courses across the country are at risk and are currently being redeveloped for housing. The fact that Larchmont's a seasonal course makes it even more vulnerable to the question of highest and best use for public benefit. This proposal provides a replacement option today within close proximity to the existing course for a public municipal golf course. It's our opinion that housing at the Larchmont site, with its connection to transportation, public utilities, and public services, offers the highest public benefit from this proposal.
Hey,
Additional
Jeff,
benefits.
Jeff, could you hold on just for a second? We got a comment that someone is not seeing the slides advance.
We are.
Is there any reason why that would not be reflected in other people's view?
It's advancing on our end. Sometimes the connection speed can keep the images from advancing.
So if anyone is having trouble, we just got word that what you might try is kind of the old-fashioned approach of going off and coming back in. See if that works.
Should we hold for a minute or so?
Why don't you just keep going,
Yeah,
Jeff,
sounds
for the sake of time.
Thanks, Dave. So as we think about the benefits associated, additional benefits include opportunity for a new course, new larger clubhouse and maintenance facilities, and enhanced features to promote higher levels of participation could also be created, including indoor driving and practice facilities, for instance. A new 18-hole course can be designed with assurance that it will have minimal, if any, impact from seasonal high water conditions. A new boat recreation area can be established adjacent to Buckhouse Bridge, which could create safe and public access to the Bitterroot River, allowing connectivity from Lolo to Missoula and from Missoula downstream to the Clark Fork. The opportunity to create new enhanced trail networks for year-round exercise and skiing can improve community access for recreation. To that next slide, if you would, Kate. Several quotes here. The common thread. Prospect of putting a good number of homes on the Larchmont site could bring people back to Missoula and keep them here. Missoula is an employment hub, and there are key segments of the folks who work here that can't afford to live here and have moved out to the urban fringe and into the Bitterroot. This is a result of high demand pressure on limited housing supply. Maybe we leave this up for a moment. Give folks a chance to get back on.
Go ahead, Jeff. There's no one currently seeking admittance back into the meeting.
Okay, can you flip to the next slide, please? By building homes for Missoulians at Larchmont, we would be helping to keep people in Missoula. One side effect of this would be to reduce the total number of vehicle miles traveled by the community each day. A reduction in vehicle miles traveled reduces emissions, but also reduces time spent commuting, meaning more minutes of the day and hours in the week for Missoulians to spend time on quality of life pursuits with family, friends, and in the community. A reduction to total vehicle miles traveled also means less miles of roadway wear and tear each day. This would be effective preservation of our community's investment in infrastructure. Locating homes at Larchmont could also help maximize the effectiveness of our investment in public transportation. Imagine a neighborhood on the west side of Reserve connecting with a Mountain Line transfer center at the mall along Mary Avenue. We believe this proposal can strike a balance between preserving the quality of life that makes Missoula special, while maximizing the infrastructure investment made by the community and providing critical housing for the segments of Missoula that need it most, in a location that's connected to transportation and public services. As we mentioned earlier, this concept presented in our proposal is very preliminary in its planning and is intended to foster discussion around the current and future housing issues that we're facing in Missoula. We wouldn't be opening this discussion without having a replacement location to bring to the table for Larchmont. This idea is, at its core, a concept to allow working Missoulians to remain in Missoula and not be displaced by the ever-increasing cost of renting and owning a home in Missoula. This idea is much bigger than the development partners involved. We really appreciate your time and attention to this matter. Thank you for this forum. With that, we'll wrap up our presentation. We look forward to discussion.
Thanks, Jeff. Before we go on, how about if Bill Gallagher, if you would like to offer any words? And Bill, I don't know if anyone else from well, it looks like I can see a few folks from the board on there. If you have a representative from the board of directors for Larchmont who would like to speak also, that would be fine too. Go ahead, Bill. And you're muted.
How's that?
Yep, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we listened to the proposal. I mean, the board had, I think the commissioners got a letter from the board that speaks for most of the arguments against it. You know, they consider, we all realize there's a need for housing. I'm not real, know how affordable housing would work. I don't know that that's even attainable, to be honest with you personally. But as far as the Larchmont site goes, replacing it, I don't think it's a viable option just because of the work it takes and how long it takes to develop and mature a golf course. I mean, we've had people that have been playing here for 40 years waiting for our trees to grow up and displace them and move them to a site with, that takes another 40 years to develop and grow would not be fair to the people who have supported this place and the 45,000 people that play every year. I don't think it'd be very fair to them. That's, so, and we can go on and on. Like I say, the advisory board, voted and are not in favor of it. So, but the county and the people of the county own the property. So I think it's to try and do what's in the best interest, obviously, of the citizens, obviously, but the golfing community I know would be total impacted. I don't think the new site would produce near the revenue or number of players. I don't think it would benefit the golfing community near as much as Larchmont would. Or does.
Bill. Thanks, Bill. Is there a representative from the Larchmont Board of Directors who would like to say a few words?
I think Brent is.
Hi.
Brent.
Yep, is it microphone working?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, we've after the proposal was presented to us, we took a vote and discussed it for quite a while about the different things, and unanimously we voted to not support the proposal, of course. And we've got our letter with probably, looks like about 25 to 30 different PowerPoint little bullet points of contention with either starting a new course or doing away with the course. And something that's not on there is one thing I was just thinking of is having 3,000 extra people. We're going to have, that means probably a couple thousand extra cars and 2 stoplights. Right now with leagues, we have a tough time with guys making it by 6 o'clock from North Reserve Street the way it is. And with that many extra cars and stoplights, it's going to be very difficult for people to make it to the new site to participate in leagues. So hopefully, Jeff, you got the copy of the letter too?
Jeff?
I don't think I've received it yet. It's a chance I
Okay, well,
inbox. Yeah, sorry about that.
no problem. But that's just, I think that's our opinion on it, that there's so many different, just take a look at the bullet points. There's so many different things. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent. Appreciate it. So we've only got 20 minutes left. I'd like some time for public comment, but also time for the commission to talk amongst ourselves a little bit or ask any questions that we would like. Josh or Juanita, before we take some public comment, do you have any questions right now?
No, comment would, I mean, I'm trying to figure out what to do the next 20 minutes, so.
I think it's really important for staff that we hear from you guys. I know we're going to have lots of time to hear from the public, but it's priority for us today, since you're all in the room and it's a noticed public meeting, that you discuss it.
Josh?
So this is an intriguing idea. It's also readily apparent, super obvious, the Larchmont really is a gem, is central to our community's recreation patterns, and it's almost unimaginable to think of it not existing. Both these things are true at the same time, right? So for me to really personally kind of make sense of this, I really have to have a more clear understanding of the details. What exactly are we talking about in terms of who's going to build this golf course? How much money is going to be made? How do we know this affordability will happen? These are just the starts. Once we dive in, it's a huge amount of information. So I really would like to talk about what sort of process could we engage in so we get real answers and a real sense of detail so we could actually make a decision on how we proceed. That's my current feeling, is let's think about a process that gets us to some detailed answers so we really know what we're looking at. Right now, we just have, in my mind, we just have these two things. A bold idea attempting to address a very real crisis and this long-lasting established community gem. Like, I need more to work on than just those two things, and I'd like us to think about process on how we get to some more details.
And I have a few thoughts process-wise here in just a second. Just to get my cards on the table, I have served on the Larchmont board in past years, and so I fully understand and empathize with the concerns of the golfing community and those folks who have invested time and energy and dollars and much of their lives into this facility. Divestiture of a public property is serious business, probably as serious as it's ever been. And in the current context, we think about public lands oftentimes in terms of U.S. Forest Service, BLM land, and wanting to have access to those lands. Well, the same principles apply to public property at the local level also. So this is truly a serious matter, not something that we want to take lightly and make a snap decision on if we were going to go down the path of divestiture. Also, my enthusiasm for this project is directly proportional to the enthusiasm of the golfing community related to this project. I can't think of a project that I've been more lukewarm about in recent days, and that's not to say that we should not continue the public process and get some concrete answers to questions that we might have, but I also just want to make very clear that and I've thought about this since I first heard this coming our way, is that it would be one thing if those folks who love this golf course and use this golf course and see this as a vital piece of our community, we're enthusiastic about the prospect of having a new golf course at a different location. Clearly, that's not the case. My inbox today is full of comments that I've not had a chance to take a look at yet, so I look forward to that. In terms of process, I think would be immensely useful, and Emily, you probably don't have the answer to this today, but knowing what sort of staff resources would be necessary for us to answer the questions that I think this commission might have, what the trade-offs would be, because there are opportunity costs if staff are helping get to the bottom of some of the questions that we might have. You will be working on that as opposed to other things. So I guess I would like to know what does that look like, just in terms of staff commitment. Hold that thought. And Juanita?
Well, I think both of you captured my thoughts as well. I mean, this is the first time the three of us have ever had a chance to talk about it. And then it was just last week that the Larchmont board even got a chance to talk about it. So this still feels very new and nebulous. And like Jeff was saying, this is all conceptual, but it's, I don't feel like I know enough about it to not just feel reactionary and emotional one way or the other. And so, yeah, Emily, what are you proposing?
Can
sorry.
I throw one
Yeah,
thing
go
out?
ahead, Josh.
I get we have to short on time, so I'll try and be quick, but I'm just gonna say, I really agree with you. I feel like the onus is on the development team at this point to get this to a point where the golfing community says, yeah, we could live with this, more than live with this. We're excited about it. In kind of the same sort of design charrette way that developers who would say are hoping to get something annexed into the city and nearby neighbors aren't into it and would resist, have to work with neighbors to create a design to get everybody on board. That seems to be the heavy lift that has to happen here. And without that, I couldn't also be enthusiastic.
Well, and think about some of our other public processes related to development concepts, such as Swetupcane or the build grant area. This is not something, and I recognize that perhaps the developers want a fast track on this to some extent, but for a true public process, quality public process, that takes time.
Yeah, and with the build grant, that was arguably greenfield development. I mean, it had been kind of abandoned crop-wise a long time ago. This is the exact opposite. So I would love to hear from you on what your recommendations are on the process.
So I do agree that the onus is on the developers to do the heavy lifting with this proposal, and I think they're willing to do that. But we have an obligation as a county to look at it with clear eyes. And any process that is completely managed by the developer is not going to be a neutral process. And so no matter what, we are going to have to develop staff time and resources, money, to making sure that that neutrality is ensured. That's not to say that the developers can't do, 80% of what you're talking about, which is a huge effort, but there's no way that it's not going to take up an enormous amount of staff time too. We have the county attorney's office, my office, the communications office, and the auditor's office that will all have to contribute FTE. And we're also going to need a budget to do it. And so what I propose is, rather than decide today whether or not to dedicate staff resources to the project, maybe we could decide today to develop a work plan with the developer and bring it to you so that you can see, and I can bring you a work plan that says the number of FTE that it's going to take to develop this process, how long it's going to take. It's going to take a year at least. You guys know, you guys on the call know there is a labor shortage. We are feeling it at the county as much as anywhere. Everything takes longer. It's going to take at least a year to answer these kinds of questions. That just has to be, to manage that expectation right up at the front. How many FTE it's going to take and how much of a budget from county resources it's going to take to explore. Just today, a really good point came up about, money that was received from the federal government in the form of a grant that will have to be mitigated, you know, and so there's lots of questions like that we have to work through. And I think the first step is to figure out what it would take from our end to do and what's not going to happen. That we, you know, as you know, my work plan already has me committed 120% of my time. So what's going to come off that work plan, and what's going to come off the county attorney's work plan and Allison's work plan, and that's not to say that it won't happen and that it's not totally worth it, but we just need to come at it really realistically in terms of a capacity perspective from the county.
That sounds reasonable in terms of coming up with what,
For sure.
what
Oh,
the
this
staff
is
commitment would take.
establishing
A work plan. No, I'm not saying it's
to-
going to take a year to develop the work
The work
plan.
plan should be pretty quick.
The work plan will take a couple weeks, and then I will bring it to you guys, and I'll work with the developer. We'll say, okay, this is appropriate for you guys to do because it falls in your lane. This falls in our lane. We're the only ones that can do it. How many hours is it going to take for us to do? And then at the end, we'll bring you a work plan and we'll say, okay, here, by the way, is what's going to come off of the agenda for this year.
So the work plan would also include what the various departments will not be doing because,
I mean, it won't be in the work plan, but it'll be part of the discussion. Yes.
okay, and then
And
what is
that's-
our decision space?
So if we said yes to this, then Emily will come back in a couple weeks with a work plan and we can look at that. My understanding is right. I just want to be really clear with the public that
Yeah.
if we go down this route, this does not mean at the end of it, we say, yes, move forward with this bold plan.
No.
At the end of this, what we're going to have is a really clear sense of what all the details are, and then we can make some really informed decisions.
Yeah.
Because right now we just have some big ideas and some heartfelt feelings.
Right now, we have big ideas, heartfelt feelings, and we have no idea how much energy it's going to take to even
Absolutely.
get to the bottom of the
Yeah. questions.
So developing a work plan for county staff is the first step, and bring that back to you probably right before Christmas. And then after that, or at that meeting, you guys can decide if you think this is something that you want the county staff to, and you want to find money. We don't have it in the budget. You're going to have to find money in the budget to dedicate to doing this work.
And right now, we don't know how much we're talking about.
And I'll bring that to you. And then you guys can decide if it's worth our time to explore.
Yeah.
And then we explore, and then we'll come to you a year from now. So I think January of 2023 with if not fully cooked project, at least we have all the recipe and all the ingredients, and then you can decide if you want to cook it.
And so just so Jeff, you and Kate and your client are clear, this is not a speedy process, and the outcome is uncertain, and it's probably a year away if we move forward in the due diligence phase.
And I totally hear what you were saying earlier, Jeff, about the perishability of the replacement site. I totally get that. And also, this is a transformation of the landscape on a kind of a generational scale, and there's no way we could forge ahead with this without doing an extensive and real public process and giving you guys a chance to develop a plan that the golfing community would actually like, and an opportunity for the golfing community to really get their details in a row in order as well. So we're going to have to take the time and acknowledge the perishability and move forward thoughtfully anyway.
And I think a work plan is really nice too with the timeline, because then it gives the developers the opportunity to say, it's not worth our time. We're not willing to wait a year for a decision.
Yeah.
And so it gives the developers a chance to bail if they just can't, if we just can't move fast enough for them.
Right.
So before we run out of time, we have about 8 minutes. Clearly, there are more than 8 people on the line here,
I think
so,
there's some media too. So
yeah, and
however you want to handle it.
yeah,
just say
and
that.
we're available to answer questions after the fact or take public comment after the fact. What I'd like to do is just in the few minutes that we have available, if you're on Microsoft Teams, raise your hand and I will call on you in the order in which you raise your hand. Then we'll transition to the telephone callers, and I'll ask you to unmute yourself and say a few words. Literally, I would like you to take 1 minute or less and just articulate your thoughts. Let's begin with Bill Schwanke.
Thanks a lot. I served on the original board when the Larchmont Golf Course was built. I don't even golf anymore, but this this just blew me away when I even heard about it. There are so many questions to be answered here. I just don't, I mean, it's going to put golf, a sport, and the recreational thing against affordable housing, which is going to be an emotional crossfire. But I just can't even believe this is being considered. I'm glad you're going to have an extensive look at it, and I will be involved in that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And just to be clear, this is not a county-generated proposal. This is coming to us, and we want to be fair and give respect to the proposal that comes before us, and this is just part of the process. Sure. Fred, you have to unmute yourself. Okay, we're going to move on. Martin Kidston.
Yeah, will there be a appraisal of both pieces of property, and when will that come into the process? I didn't hear that come up. And who would build the new golf course as proposed?
Hi, Martin. Those are all questions that need to be answered, and we don't have the answer to those questions. But yes, an appraisal would of course be part of the work plan.
Thanks, Emily.
Thanks, Martin. Fred, are you back yet? You could unmute yourself.
Unmute,
Fred, you're
Fred.
gonna have to unmute yourself. Sorry, Fred. We're gonna have to move on. Jesse?
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, I mean, I know you've heard negatives from some of the people who are heavily invested in the Larchmont golf community about the idea of switching how golf works in Missoula potentially. But there are other golfers who live in Missoula and love golf and are interested in potentially a architecturally significant new golf course. I mean, I think we need to look at what we could get for the money, because Larchmont is a fine golf course, but there are municipal golf courses in this country that bring in substantial money from out of town and charge out of town people more because they're such good golf courses. And I think that's something we need to talk about at some point, is bringing a really good golf course to town that's publicly owned rather than an okay golf course. Thanks.
Thanks, Jesse. And I'd encourage you to reach out to the Larchmont board also if you have ideas on what a public golf course might look like in your eyes. Kent, no last name. Is there a Kent out there? Unmute yourself, please. Okay. Okay, go ahead, Kent.
My question is to the WGM group, and that is, it was my understanding that they were requesting some kind of a response from the county commissioners this calendar year. There's been some mention of how that process needs to be a lot longer than that. But I guess my question is, why is WGM asking for a response so quickly?
And Kent, we don't have time to get into back and forth with questions and answers. Suffice it to say, it's going to take longer than December for Missoula County to come to any resolution on this. Perhaps that's a point that we could try to answer after the fact.
All right, thank you.
Yep, sorry, we just don't have time today for that. Let's go to the phone callers first. Is there anyone on the line calling in by phone who would like to speak? If so, hit *6 to unmute yourself and introduce yourself. Okay, let's
Hello?
go. Yes, please introduce yourself.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, my name is Mackenzie, and I have little boys up in the Miller Creek area. My concern is always for the schools. Right now, we can't even get into our school district that we own a home in because it's overcrowded. We have to go to a neighboring elementary school. And so with 3,000 people coming in, maybe 1/3 of those could be children. That's 1,000. Half would be maybe elementary school to junior high. I mean, that's a whole nother school that would need to be built. That's, our schools are made for 450 to 500 kids. So I think that would be another big concern if you're just talking about housing that many more people in this area.
Thanks, Mackenzie. anyone else on the phone who would like to say a few words? We've got about 3 minutes left. Fred Stewart, are you still out there on Microsoft Teams and would like to unmute yourself? Okay, in the final 2 minutes, Jeff, you want to take a shot at, do you have an answer for the earlier caller in terms of, is there a sense of urgency on the part of your client?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks for that. I'd clarify up front, we'd be very interested in engaging in a quality public process on this, and thank you all for your efforts there. The challenge with timing is purchase of the bulk of the replacement site. So there's a portion under contract, and do we close? So yeah, will that site remain as open space, or will it be developed for another use? How long can we wait to decide what to do with the property that we're working towards?
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Well, we are about out of time today. We absolutely appreciate everyone who was able to participate. Thank you, Jeff and Kate, for presenting the proposal to us today. We will be taking a couple of weeks to regroup on our end to come up with just the opportunity costs of and the staff commitment for doing due diligence to take a hard look at this proposal. And this will be, we are not sure exactly what sort of forum the meeting will be, whether it's a dedicated meeting unto itself or part of one of our other public meetings. But stay tuned, members of the public. Emily, anything else you want to end with?
No, I think you summed it up. We'll develop a budget and opportunity costs from a capacity perspective at the county, and then you and the developer and Larchmont folks can all weigh in again at that point, and the public can weigh in again too.
And between now and then, if folks want to offer public comment, reach out to us via email, phone, however you like to reach out to the Board of County Commissioners.
Yep, we love hearing from people. It's really important. Stuff comes up all the time in those emails that we hadn't thought of. So thanks.
Thank you, everyone. We'll be adjourned today.
Thanks all. Appreciate it.